see a declaration from this Congress tomorrow declaring support for force?
What you may see is as early as today.
At earliest today?
You may see it as early as today,
okay,
Kate.
Thank you,
I'm going in to present it now.
Thank you. Senator Joseph Biden on his way to a meeting of the Democratic leaders here in the Senate where they'll try to sort some of this out. Back to you, Miles.
All right, CNN's Kate Snow with Senator Biden. CNN's continuing coverage, America Under Attack. We'll pause momentarily. We'll be right back.
Good morning from New York City today. It is a nasty day as cleanup efforts get underway. The soft rain that we saw earlier this morning has turned into a downpour, severely hampering rescue and cleanup efforts, making it very difficult for those thousands of very brave rescue workers to go into the debris field. It is muddy down there. It is slippery. There is great concern about the stability of what is left of the twin 107-story towers. About 1,000 rescue workers were pulled off their jobs last night because of the lightning and thunder that rumbled through the area. Many of them wearing slickers and rain gear today. Once again, they are working under extremely hazardous conditions. This at a time when the mayor is expected to hold a news conference shortly. He is confirming this morning at least 5,000 people are missing in New York City. There's a great deal of concern about what kinds of conditions will await the president when he arrives here later this afternoon to meet firsthand with some of the very brave Americans who are assisting in this effort. Right now, I wanted to bring you up to date on what we know at this hour. Some interesting news out of Washington. Both black boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, have been recovered from the jet that crashed into the Pentagon on Tuesday. And as I've just said, here in New York, it couldn't be any worse for all those workers that are joining in the recovery efforts at the World Trade Center. Once again, the rain was so heavy overnight, the search suspended. Great concern about the cranes potentially conducting electricity if lightning struck. 4,763 people missing. Actually, since then, the city has told us more than that. They are saying at least 5,000 missing. President, of course, coming here later today following a memorial service in Washington, D.C. Services of this kind will be held throughout the nation today. Europeans paused for 3 minutes of silence this morning in memory of those killed Tuesday in the United States. Let's take a short pause here. The Council of Europe and the 15 members of the European Union called on all nations to combat terrorism and defend human values. Meanwhile, CNN has obtained exclusive video recorded from the inside of a World Trade Center office on Tuesday, the day of the attacks. The video shows the debris in the office and, through a gaping hole in the wall, which you'll see here shortly, the mountains of rubble outside the Trade Center. It's a miracle anybody got out of here. Right now, I'm going to join Martin Savage, who is at Ground Zero, who is continuing to deal with heavy rain that might wreak havoc on his live shot. But Martin will stay with you as long as the television equipment allows us to do so. What's going on there?
We'll do the same, Paula. Well, it's the rain, it's the weather. That is the major story or headline, at least for the moment, when it comes to the rescue operation that is continuing. Right now, according to rescuers and volunteers who have been coming off the night shift, they say that the weather has had a significant negative impact on their ability to search for a lot of reasons. One, it has made the debris pile in the area they're working in very hazardous. Footing there is very slippery. Hardly a volunteer that has not been slightly injured in some way or another, scraped hands, bruised and battered as they try to go about the work of searching. This is one of the checkpoints here that's several blocks north of where the World Trade Center once stood. It is one of the closest points that you can get. It's also a point where the teams are coming and going. They report that the rains, which have been steady this morning, last night, were extremely heavy. About 2 a.m., they said, was the worst. Lightning was bad. They had to evacuate at times because of that lightning, stopped some of the work. The hand digging for now has pretty much been brought to a standstill. Instead, what is being done is the work by the heavy earth-moving equipment. Also, the iron workers are using the welding and the acetylene torches to cut through all the steel. But you've also got the wind in addition to the rain, and the wind and rain combination is putting load factors on top of buildings that are not structurally sound, and that is the serious problem here. They were already weakened yesterday. They were already in fear of falling down. Now you add the wind, which may not seem significant, but even the slightest wind at this particular point, plus the rain combined with it, has got to make engineers, they're very nervous. Of course, it's the engineers that stand by the buildings, literally watching them moment to moment, keeping an eye on them, sort of watching the backs of all the rescuers that are down in the pits or down digging, trying to find survivors. The moment any word is heard, everyone immediately leaves the area and evacuates. Listening is the greatest tool they have right now, and one of the most dramatic scenes, we've seen it on tape, we've heard it from the volunteers. You have thousands sometimes of people working sort of en masse over this debris field, and then someone will call for quiet, and it spreads throughout the entire complex. The shout passed from one worker to the next, and this huge complex, all those workers and machinery instantly shut down, and it goes silent, and they listen, and they hope. They say, not since yesterday, though, have they heard anything. And the rain, obviously, and the wind, making it even harder still. Paula.
Martin, continued good luck to all those heroic Americans down there. Thank you so much for that update. We'll come back to you throughout the morning. Joining me right now is Amy Steelman and Lou Angeli. You both have been firefighters for many, many years. You were invited by the International Association of Firefighters to help us better understand what your brethren are up to at this hour. You actually make instructional videos for firemen. What I'd like for you to do for us now, we're going to put up on the screen some of the video you were able to shoot on Wednesday night down at Ground Zero. Extremely treacherous conditions. Describe to us what you're seeing or what you saw as soon as this video comes up. Either one of you. I know this is difficult for you. And if you can't see the picture, just tell me what you saw when you went down there.
Okay, this is from building number 5. Actually, this was Ground Zero. There were just thousands of firefighters staging in the area at this time. I think the thing that impressed me the most at this point was the work of the operating engineers, the folks the steel and structural people, who were removing huge chunks of debris and finessing these huge girders and stuff so that the firefighters and the rescue teams could actually go in and sift through the rubble.
How dangerous is it?
It's extremely dangerous. The buildings are unstable. Firefighters, as seen here, are having injuries. Amy ended up getting injured yesterday.
What happened to you?
I think it was an accumulation. Wednesday, we spent the entire day, the entire evening at Ground Zero, and I had a lot of chest pain, a lot of discomfort trying to breathe. And then we were coming back yesterday to shoot again, and I ended up in the hospital. I had a seizure, and
oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And what you experienced, I'm sure, is very similar to what those firefighters on duty and other rescue workers are up against.
It's ludicrous to think that these little paper masks that they're running around wearing are efficient at filtering the oppressiveness of the air down there. It's full of fibrous materials. You can feel how heavy and how thick the air gets the closer you become with Ground Zero. And most of those guys, God love them, are out there without really any kind of protection for their lungs at all.
They are well aware of the risks they're taking.
I don't know that they're aware of the risks that they're taking. I don't know that there has been an influx of equipment to handle that problem, as far as breathing apparatus, and you were talking about specific kinds of masks.
Right now at Ground Zero, there are 3 levels of firefighters and 3 levels of training. The Fire Department of New York, of course, it's their jurisdiction, and their firefighters are there and doing a lot of the moving of debris and checking for bodies and survivors. And we have urban search and rescue teams who've come in from all over the country. I believe that there are 14 here now of the 28 that operate throughout the United States. These teams are special teams that do nothing but search and rescue.
And there are 75 members on each team.
And they come in. You can tell the difference because they wear a blue jumpsuit and usually have a white hard hat. But the kind of respirators that they're using, we would call a half-mask respirator with 2 filters on it. Those are the kind of respirators that these firefighters need, and it's just not something that the fire department has in inventory.
Well, should it? I mean, now that we've seen the magnitude of something like this happening, are you angry that your fellow firefighters are down there breathing this stuff that sent you to the hospital yesterday?
What needs to be understood is that firefighters and rescue personnel are just now getting their first taste of being trained for terrorist activity.
And how are they doing?
This is not our training.
As best they can, right?
As best they can.
But they are severely compromised, are they not, by the lack of equipment?
Kurt Weldon, Congressman Kurt Weldon from Pennsylvania, has been working this angle for several years. We've been trying to get firefighters trained to learn domestic terrorism response. Certainly when the first firefighters arrived at the World Trade Center, what they faced was a blazing liquid, flammable liquid fire. They certainly didn't anticipate that another jet would crash in, nor would the 2 buildings collapse on them. And so we as firefighters perhaps need to start thinking like soldiers and like the military.
Well, isn't that sad?
We have no choice. If this is what we're going to face, and we have to be trained for our own safety as well as the safety of, you know, the people around us, how to respond appropriately.
It is very difficult right now because everybody's skirting around the edges of this question. To tell the American public right now about what impact this rain is going to have on this effort. We have seen that rain come down and down for many hours. Be as honest as you can this morning about what that means.
Now, Paula, there will definitely be a delay in the operation. The rain causes another problem in the sense that it creates a safety hazard for the rescuers themselves, a major safety hazard. It becomes a slipping hazard.
It was already slippery out there before the rain, you know, just from all the water that they've been putting on the fires and it running out. It was already a mess. I can't imagine what this has done to Ground Zero at this point.
Well, what's interesting about the television coverage, too, is that we see Ground Zero from Ground Zero, which would be
it looks quite clinical, these shots that we're seeing right now.
But
not your shots.
When we get there and we walk around the circumference or the diameter of the area and check the perimeters, there are little operations, little pockets of rescue activity that are going on all the way around that area. And it'd be kind of interesting for the news services to start getting some shots from the south side of the building, to get an idea of what's going on there, because we've seen a number of rescue activities going on around the buildings.
I hope you know, and we're going to show you some video now that might help you better understand this, how the American public is reacting to the heroism we've seen displayed during this horrendous period of our history. Here are a group of New Yorkers who started to applaud firefighters as they walk through a part of New York. I will tell you, every time I report these statistics about the numbers of your fellow firefighters you have lost, you get the same kind of reaction. It's touched a very raw nerve. You understand that, don't you?
We understand it very well. When we were going in on Tuesday, when we were coming out of Ground Zero on Tuesday, the people of New York have the biggest heart that I've ever seen. They were handing out food, they were handing out water. Many of the restaurants around that are open will feed firefighters for free. And it just, they applaud, they hold up signs, they say thank you, they come up, they hug you. And we're just out there doing what we do. You know, none of that is necessary, but it's just, that's what moves you more than anything else. It's hard to figure out exactly the loss of life when you're right up on top of things, because you're looking at a pile of rubble. You know, it's hard to imagine how many people lost their lives in this building because it's not something you can see. You know, you're just looking at the rubble. And then you come out to these groups of people who are all hoping and praying that, you know, you find someone they know or a loved one, and they are just so generous and so loving and so beautiful to behold.
I know.
We as firefighters tend to be a family. We are
A
a
very
family.
humble family, I might add.
We are America's largest private club, and we often feel that the public takes us for granted. I think that the two of us have been affected. We will never feel that way again.
No.
Driving out of that area in one of the fire trucks the other day, just for 10 blocks, 6 people deep on both sides, applauding, holding up signs, "We love you."
Handing out water.
And that's what we try to do with our videotape, and that is to try to communicate to the brother and sister firefighters around the country that this is how these firefighters are being treated.
Before I let you go, I know you never want credit for what you think you are expected to do. But you can't come out of, and we're looking at right now, look at this picture now, the thousands of firefighters on duty now. But when you have seen what you have seen, how do you deal with it? I mean, like you just told me, you feel that this is the start of a change in the way firefighters are taught, that now they're becoming soldiers. How do you deal with what the two of you have witnessed in terms of the sense of loss and what your brothers and sisters are up to now downtown?
I don't think initially that it hits you because you're so busy working. You're scrambling around, you're looking for any sign of life. With us, we're videotaping, we're trying to, you know, show the work efforts, and that way hopefully we can do training videos that will help to improve how we respond to terrorist acts, because obviously now we're going to have to respond to terrorist acts.
Lou, a final thought from you this morning.
I think that this is probably firefighting's brightest hour, and in the 260 years that we've been doing this in the United States, since Ben Franklin formed the first fire department in Philadelphia. I can just tell you, I'm just so proud to be a firefighter, proud to call these fellows from New York. We lost several friends in the collapse, and we will never forget them, and our hope is that this will be a tribute to the work that they do.
I don't think I'm being presumptuous here today at all, but I know as I salute you, all Americans salute what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Very
Thank you,
much.
Paul.
I should mention, as we were talking, I was told that the rescue efforts have picked back up. There was a period of about a half hour ago where the rain was coming down very, very hard, and the cleanup and recovery efforts slowed down dramatically. Let's go back to Miles now. Miles, and I do want to let you know that the mayor is still planning to hold that news conference that was supposed to come up just about 20 minutes ago. And if and when that happens, we will bring it to you live.
All right, naturally, and we join in that salute as well. Let's take a look at the nation's air traffic control system right now. This is a live image of what's in the air right now. Every one of those blue dots represents either an airline flight or, in this case today, a chartered flight. Right now, that might seem like a lot of dots to you. There's about 1,000 flights in the air that I just counted. That is just a small fraction of what's going on a normal day. Let's take a look at a closer view. This looks like an awful lot of flights as well as we get closer in on the eastern seaboard. A lot of activity, but as I say, about a quarter of a normal morning. There are usually about 4,000 flights aloft at any given moment. Let's hone in a little bit on the New York area. And as we take, I'm going to go up north a little bit more over here. There's LaGuardia Airport right there. As I circle that so you know where that is. There's Newark Airport, and there's JFK. All of those are closed, and that is why you are seeing such a dearth of traffic in those locations. Take a look at this list here. We have a list of all of the flights that are currently flying right now. And just to give you an example, I can do this by destination and give you that there are about 40 flights that are headed inbound to Atlanta's airport, Hartsfield Airport. Well, that's the second busiest airport in the world. 40 flights inbound on a normal morning is a fraction of what's going on. We'll give you a close-up view of that. That's the area around the Atlanta airport right now. There are flights coming in, there are flights going out, but it is still a fraction of what we normally would have. So the system is still trying to get back up to speed, if you will. Airports in some places still remaining closed. Other airports just bringing air traffic back up to full speed in a gradual way, sometimes a bit chaotic, a lot of misinformation about what is legal, who can fly at any given moment, especially when you get into general aviation and charters and that sort of thing. Jean Meserve is in our Washington bureau. She has a little bit more on the nation's air traffic system. Jean?
Miles, specifically about Ronald Reagan National Airport. It will not open today. It will not open tomorrow, according to a spokesman for the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, which runs the airport. The operating phrase right now is that the airport is closed for the time being. There has been some speculation that National could be closed down permanently because of its location. It is very close to downtown Washington. Planes coming in on their flight paths come very close to the CIA, to all of Washington's government offices and monuments, also, of course, to the Pentagon. We do know that airport authorities are in consultations with the FAA and, according to congressional sources, security organizations as well, trying to determine when this airport will reopen. A spokesman, once again, for the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority says, "We don't know anyone in government that has publicly speculated that the airport will not reopen. The only discussions we are having right now are when it will reopen again." They also say that one reason they're keeping it closed for the time being is not only because of security concerns which envelop every airport in the country, but because this airport is located right across the river from the Pentagon, where, of course, rescue efforts still continue today. A congressional source tells me that another thing they're waiting for is for the fear factor to decrease. Clearly, people all across the country are very much on edge about air travel, specifically here in Washington, where the Pentagon was hit with one of those aircraft, and so they are waiting for people to calm down a bit. That is another factor in the deliberations, according to this congressional source, on when to open Reagan National. But once again, not open today, not open tomorrow, won't speculate on when it will reopen, but they say at the present time there are no discussions saying it will not ever reopen. Back to you, Miles.
All right, thank you very much, Jean Meserve's got a phone call to get. Just to underscore that point briefly, if anybody who's in the audience who has flown into Washington knows, you fly and approach right down the Potomac River, right to DCA, which is National Airport. Right along here is the mall, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, the White House, right on that edge there. So you can understand why security folks are very concerned about this airport in particular. There's Dulles Airport out there, that is less of a concern because of its proximity to the nation's landmarks. Just to show you what's in the air around there, there's an American Airlines flight which took off from Baltimore Washington Airport. Here's a Delta Airlines flight which took off from BWI as well on its way to Atlanta, transiting the airspace, but not, of course, landing at those airports at the current time. Security considerations, the issue there. At 11:45 Eastern Time, coming up in just a little bit, a little more than 2 hours from now, and there'll be a period of mourning, a service at the National Cathedral, also in Washington, Northwest Washington. We spoke a little while ago with the Dean of the National Cathedral, who spoke about what will be said in the way of healing. The President, members of the Cabinet, members of Congress will be in attendance for this national moment of mourning. And we, of course, here at CNN plan to bring you that event live, and that'll be at 11:45 Eastern Time. Let's send it back to New York and Paul Lazan.
All right, Miles, as you know, as you look at this picture of New York skyline, the conditions couldn't be any more treacherous for the thousands of rescue workers that are downtown right now trying to dig through the rubble. Here's what the skyline looks out like this morning. That is not smoke you're looking at, which is in fact what we had been looking at over the last 3 days. It's fog. A flag flying at half-mast in Midtown. Flags flying at half-mast all over the city. In fact, I saw a number of people yesterday in full flag regalia, holding flags, walking up and down the streets in tremendous bumper-to-bumper traffic, screaming out loud, "I'm proud to be an American," that at a time yesterday when there were some 60 bomb threats in the city. Thank goodness, all of them false. What you're looking at now are the volunteers that continue to stream in to places all over the city. This happens to be the Jacob Javits Convention Center in New York. Volunteers have had to be turned away all over the city. As you know, the Red Cross has made a plea for people to donate blood. Even area hospitals haven't been able to take on the crowds of people who are offering to donate blood. By the way, many of the folks you see standing in line have been standing in line for at least 6 hours. Tremendous thunderstorm hit the city last night in the wee hours of the morning, and shortly after that, these folks started congregating to offer whatever services they could to assist in the rescue efforts. They, of course, are being bolstered by what some of our firefighters just described. 14 of the top search and rescue teams that you could be found in the United States. Mayor Giuliani expected to hold a news conference. It has been delayed. It was supposed to happen about a half hour ago. We will go to that live when it happens, but the latest we can tell you right now from the city is the city still believes some 4,700 people are missing, close to 100 people confirmed dead. You got families all over the city who had friends and other family members who worked in the World Trade Center, still going through the horrendous task of going from hospital to hospital to find out if perhaps their friends and family members are alive. We're going to check in with Hillary Lane right now, who joins us from the Armory in New York City, where people continue to show up with information on their friends and family members, hoping to find out what happened to them. Hillary?
Well, Paula, as you said, there are still at least 4,700 people missing. So this giant building behind me has been turned into one large missing persons center. And what is happening here today is a different picture from what we saw yesterday. Yesterday, the lines were wrapping around the block, people bringing pictures, waiting to fill out 8-page missing persons reports. Each person individually then meeting with a police detective, asked for all sorts of personal information, any sort of body marks, being asked for names of dentists, being asked to hold on to personal items such as hairbrushes, dental records and hairbrushes, obviously two items that could be very useful for DNA identification, which will be one of the next steps in the coming days as they do begin to recover more and more remains. Since we cannot take you inside of the building, I'm going to talk now with a gentleman who filed one of these missing persons reports yesterday. His name is Ronaldo Gargano, and his nephew, Rocco, has been missing since Tuesday. So if you could tell me a little bit about what happened when you went into the building yesterday and what sort of questions the detectives were asking you.
They were asking me to bring any kind of information or any kind of distinctive marks I can have for my nephew. That way they were able to identify him in case of he is found.
There were grief counselors as well. Did you stop and talk to anybody to get any sort of advice on how to talk to your other family members?
They gave me something. They said to try to remain as calm as possible and try to comfort, the one that's mostly, touched by it. And it's been very difficult, very difficult.
I assume even more so day by day, now day 4. Please tell me now what this is like for you.
It's been very hard, very grieving. It's been insurmountable type of pain, but I do know that he is not on any kind of list, either missing, dead, or in the hospital, so I do still have a lot of hope for him. I hope they will be found. I hope that the picture that I'm circulating will be seen by someone to identify him, and we'll get some sort of news to the home, to his mother, to me, and to everyone else that's really involved.
Mr. Gargano, thank you very much for your time, and good luck to you in your search. So, Paula, that is what is happening around here. You have people walking around with missing persons posters. They're showing these faces anywhere they can. They're trying to maintain any hope that they possibly can, but as every day passes and as this rain falls, it becomes even more difficult. One of the gentlemen I was talking to earlier this morning has said that what he had as hope is now turning to anger, and it's growing. He came back today to present even more information, but he's basically said as day 4 has come, he doesn't really think there's much of a chance of finding his sister, who hasn't been seen since Tuesday. Back to you.
Boy, Hillary, it is absolutely brutal to hear what these people are telling you this morning. Thank you. We'll come back to you a little bit later on this morning to see what else you have learned. Before I head back to Atlanta, I wanted to quickly bring you up to date on some of what is being done in New York Today, in various boroughs of New York, you've got people collecting donations of clothing and supplies. You've got memorial services being held throughout the city. You have one at a mosque in the northern part of the city, and we're told dozens and dozens of churches and synagogues throughout the city. We are also told that the USNS Comfort, which is one of the Navy's 2 hospital ships, will arrive in New York at some point today to provide disaster relief. In addition to that, there will be wakes, obviously, for the various firefighters that are known to be dead. I think, Miles, probably one of the saddest things I've heard here this morning when we focus in on firefighters is the fact that firefighters are instinctually trained to go for the flames. And I was told that many of these 300 or so firefighters that lost their life probably didn't give any thought, because their initial instinct was to save people to what, the jet fuel that was falling on them meant, and even thinking about the stability of the buildings. Mayor Giuliani expected to hold a news conference. It has been delayed. We don't know when that's going to come down, but we will go to it live. And Miles, there's one other thing I'd like to share with you right now. We have, you're finding about the wonderful level of support all over the city. But last night and even today in this horrific weather, there's a park that is about 30 blocks north of the World Trade Center, which has become a memorial to the victims. And what people have done is spread out big rolls of poster paper on the ground, and this is at Union Square Park, and by the hundreds, New Yorkers have been walking by and scribbling messages in this constant pour of rain.
Such a series of contrasts to report from New York City these days. All right, Paul Lazan, thank you. We'll check in with her in just a bit. Let's keep it in New York, however. This is day 4 now, and yet another day the markets will not open for obvious reasons, an unprecedented shutdown. Christine Romans is in our financial newsroom with more on that. Christine?
Good morning, Miles. For the 4th day in a row, there was no opening bell on Wall Street, and there will be no stock trading. The last time the market was shut this long was in 1914 during World War I, when the New York Stock Exchange shut its doors for 4.5 months in response to the fighting in Europe. Officials say stocks will reopen Monday morning, and teams are working to get everything in order at the trading facilities. Extensive system tests will be conducted tomorrow, focusing heavily on how communications equipment is functioning. More than 20% of the NYSE's telecom data flowed through a facility adjacent to the World Trade Towers. Local phone company Verizon has been feverishly attempting to rebuild that capacity. So what can investors expect this time Monday morning? Well, some experts are still predicting a steep sell-off in stock prices. They are mainly worried about the economy's ability to stay out of recession following Tuesday's terrorist attacks. But a growing number of analysts say stocks could open flat or even slightly higher. That's because investors have had some downtime to reflect and see that the nation's economy is not in crisis. And some analysts even say a bit of patriotism might come into play. Investors don't want to cause any panic selling. Analysts say an earlier resumption of trading could have caused an extremely volatile atmosphere and may indeed have led to panic selling. Another factor that could help in yesterday's market stability in Asia and Europe. Japan's Nikkei average even rallied 4% in Tokyo Friday, but Europe's major markets have not been so lucky. They're moving lower again today, hurt by steep losses in airline stocks. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., bond and commodity trading is underway for the second straight session in Chicago. Short-term Treasury notes rallied initially on the possibility the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates when stocks open after the weekend. Miles?
All right, CNN's Christine Romans at the Financial News Desk in New York. Here's a look at the developments to this point for you. We're looking at pictures of the National Cathedral right now, live pictures where President Bush shortly will lead the nation in a prayer service for the victims of the terrorist attacks. That's to occur at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time. We, of course, bring that to you live as it happens. Earlier this morning, friends of the United States overseas paused for 3 minutes of silence. In London, the House of Commons paused before an emergency meeting to discuss the attack on America. In Berlin and across Germany at noon, local time, bells rang out at churches and cathedrals as well-wishers observed 3 minutes of silence. And at noon in Paris, French President Jacques Chirac led his country in observing 3 minutes of silence. At Élysée Palace, France's Republican Guard played the Star-Spangled Banner. And back in New York this morning, the weather not cooperating at all with the search and recovery efforts. We've been telling you this all this morning. Heavy rain will certainly make this hard to even imagine task even more difficult. As we tell you, in a little more than 2 hours' time, there will be a national prayer service at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Among the people who will be participating one way or another is Bishop T.D. Jakes, who is with the Potter's House. He joins us now to talk a little bit about what Americans can expect in the days ahead and what Americans of faith are thinking right now. Good to have you with us, Bishop Jakes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
What are your thoughts on this day of prayer?
I think it's a very essential moment for the nation to come together and come to grips with the presence of God and allowing God's grace and presence to fortify us and undergird us as we're feeling vulnerable and we know that there are many important decisions to be made. We want divine intervention in those decisions.
A little while ago, I asked the Dean of the National Cathedral what the scriptures say about retribution, about the desire for vengeance. Certainly, if you look in the Old Testament, there's plenty of examples of vengeance. Do you choose to interpret the scriptures that way?
Well, you know, I think what's important for us is that the Bible says that the powers that be are ordained of God, and it respects the leadership that is in place. And I think it's a strong time for Americans to gather and galvanize around the leadership that we have in place, and they're doing that there is a strong solidarity between people of all races, all cultures, and all religions in this country. We're feeling unified like I've never seen before and looking to our government to make the right decisions and appropriate those decisions for the betterment of our nation.
Well, but specifically, though, what do you tell your flock about the desire for some kind of vengeance? Do you tell them that's inappropriate, or?
No. I think that it's more important rather than to be critical of a natural reaction to pain, which is anger. All of us are feeling angry and hostility. And the Bible said, be angry and sin not. So it does acknowledge that there is a human reaction where it is natural to be angry. It is a process of grief. And rather than to chasten people for being angry, I think we need to support them and offer solutions that we can disperse that anger appropriately through prayer, interacting with our families, communicating with one another, reaching out to help people in need, often gives us a sense of being able not only to respond to the crisis, but to help with the solution.
Give us a sense of the words that you choose right now when people come to you and say, for one reason or another, this whole thing has left them questioning their faith and wondering how a God could allow this to happen.
You know, I've been quick to respond to that because I think that those illustrations are much more applicable when people are facing a tornado or an earthquake and they associate those issues with God. But even in those cases, that's not an accurate association, but it does occur. In this case, it is clearly not an issue of man in conflict with God or God with man. This is man in conflict with man. I think Americans understand that this is brought about through the evil and the wickedness of man against man and not an act against God. Our faith is essential because as we face the complexities of how do we protect ourselves and are we really protected sufficiently, there is that divine component of allowing God to be our strength, fortify us, and to lead us into the days ahead.
You talk about the days ahead. As the shock wears off and the grief progresses into its various stages, it sometimes can be even more challenging for people coping with this, either intimately or from afar. This grief transcends just those who are directly involved. We all are after all, affected. What's your biggest concern as time goes on?
You know, I have a lot of concerns. First of all, I don't think we've even begun to grieve. We were shocked at first. Now we're going into an anger stage. Many people in New York and around the world are hoping against hope that their loved ones might be found. So they're suspended. They have not resolved in their own minds that these are casualties yet. They can't really grieve appropriately because there are so many unanswered questions who is going to be found. Maybe someone escaped the building, has not been notified. And so they're not really entering into true grief yet because they're suspended, which is a very painful time. And during this time, support from family, from churches, from synagogues help to fortify us. And then after that, we enter into true grief and acceptance if we're unable to find or locate the loved ones that we are waiting and hoping against hope that we might be able to find.
Bishop Jakes, I wonder if you could share some words of prayer with us. What are the words that are appropriate at this time?
You know, I would like to take this opportunity to pray, and those that are watching right now, just to pray with you and just to believe God and ask the Father to come and comfort in a special way those that are hurting, those that are angry, and those that are confused. Father, we seize this opportunity to ask you to just cover with your grace and mercy and love those who are wounded in a way that only you can do on the inside, giving grace and peace to them. We pray for the president. We pray for his decisions, for Congress, that you might lead us into the days ahead with your divine protection. This is my prayer, and I pray it unto the Lord in his name. And I want to invite Americans everywhere, in whatever method you choose to pray, to join us as we seek and call on the name of God to answer and to heal and to lead our nation through the tough days ahead.
Bishop T.D. Jakes, my apologies. Thank you for sharing that with us. Really appreciate your time and your thoughts and your prayers with us on this day of prayer.
And God bless America.
All right, and just to remind our viewers, in just about 2 hours' time, that National Prayer Service at Washington's National Cathedral, Cathedral Heights, Wisconsin Avenue, will be filled with all kinds of people, from the president on down, the cabinet, members of Congress. Reverend Billy Graham will be delivering that sermon. We, of course, will bring that to you live so you can join in the prayer. Let's send it back to Paula, New York.
Okay, thanks so much, Miles. It continues to pour here in New York City, making already hazardous conditions even worse for the rescue workers toiling in the rubble of the World Trade Center. Flags like this flying at half-mast all over the city. We've talked a lot about how the rain is slowing down the search and recovery effort. And one of the more bizarre pieces of information we've just gotten from a Suffolk police officer is that as hard as this rain is making things downtown, is making the debris field very wet, very slippery, the dogs who are assisting in the search, their ability to go through the rubble. Apparently the scent, and this is sort of cold hard stuff to share with you, but the scent of any survivor actually stays closer to the ground because of the water, but that the dogs would be able to pick up that scent. There is still hope that workers and lost in this rubble might be found alive. That is why the rescue efforts go on in earnest. Now, it remains to be seen what impact this is going to have on the president's traveling plans after he finishes up at the National Prayer Service at the National Cathedral. He is expected to come here to New York to get his firsthand look of what has happened to the city. And Major Garrett now joins us from the White House with more details on that. Is the weather going to change anything, Major?
Paula, there's no indication of that now. I've checked with White House sources repeatedly this morning. They say the president still intends to travel to New York City. I've spoken with representatives in the office of Representative Gerald Nadler. He is a Democrat from New York, in whose district the World Trade Center resides, what's left of it. They say they have received no word from the White House that the president will not, in fact, carry out with his intentions to travel to New York City after the National Prayer Service at the National Cathedral. So that's where we are right now. But clearly weather is an issue. The underlying thought was that the president would take Air Force One to the general area, then from an undisclosed location, fly by helicopter to see and survey the damage from above. Clearly, if there is inclement weather, that makes the question of a helicopter trip all the more real. But no announcement officially from the White House that this trip, in fact, will not occur. Every indication, both from the Capitol Hill and from the White House here, is the president will, in fact, go on to New York City. We'll keep you posted on that. I can tell you at this very moment, the president is meeting with his entire cabinet in the cabinet room here at the White House. It is the first full cabinet meeting the president has convened since the disastrous and catastrophic events of Tuesday. The president is trying to coordinate as best he can all federal relief efforts, which will probably touch almost every agency of the federal government in one way or another. And he can do that now with the confidence that the White House and Congress have reached a deal on a $40 billion emergency supplemental spending bill. $10 billion of that $40 billion will be made immediately available to the president to use for recovery efforts in New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, but most especially in New York City, where the rubble is so incredibly immense and the task so daunting for those on the ground. So that's what we know here so far, Paul. I can also tell you, having talked to the Secret Service again just moments ago, the security perimeter that was extended about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon around the White House, bumping it out at 2 full blocks to the north, will continue today. And in fact, the Secret Service told me that it is still operating on what it describes as a very high state of alert. There is, as Jim Mackin, the spokesman for the Secret Service, told me, a lot of intelligence coming in, and the Secret Service will maintain that extensive and extended perimeter of security around the White House. Mr. Mackin telling CNN that it could shrink sometime today, but it could also go back to what it is right now. And he said that could go on for many, many days because the Secret Service does believe there is a continuing threat to the White House, and so it's going to take every single precaution it believes necessary to protect not only the president, the press who work here, the larger White House staff family, but also the very citizenry of Washington, D.C. that works in this general area. Paula?
Major, unfortunately, once again, I missed part of your report because we're constantly being handed new information. I know the last time I spoke with you, you mentioned that the Vice President, Dick Cheney, will not be at the prayer service. Explain to us why.
He is not scheduled to be at the prayer service. He is not on any official list of those who will be attending. The Vice President was moved from the White House complex yesterday to the Camp David presidential retreat. Why? Because the Secret Service determined that for security reasons, it was not a good idea to have the Vice President and the President of the United States in the same place at the same time. That gives you a sense of just how pronounced the security concerns are for the Secret Service. They want to separate the Commander-in-Chief from the second-in-command or the second-in-line for the presidency at this moment of heightened security alert here at the White House. So for all the information we've gathered this morning, the Vice President will remain at Camp David. The President will be here, and he will not be with the President at that prayer service at the National Cathedral.
All right, Major, thanks so much for that update. And I should add to what Major just said on the New York front that most of us that were out in the city early this morning have never seen the degree of security that now is in place to greet the president when he arrives here later today. Mayor Giuliani expected to hold a news conference at some point. This is probably one of the most anticipated news conferences. It was supposed to happen about 45 minutes ago. Now we're told it will indeed happen in 10 minutes. If and when that happens, we'll bring it to you live. You see the podium that the mayor will be standing at, and he will have a lot of information to share with us. Is that indeed the podium where the mayor will be addressing us from? I believe so, the mysterious podium. But I can confirm for you this morning the city maintains that at least at this point 4,700, more than 4,700 people are still missing. Among those is a man named Carlos Morales. Joining us this morning is Noemi Morales and Richard Gonzalez. It is your brother who is missing.
Yes.
Who did he work for? Where was he the day of these attacks? Welcome.
Thank you. He worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, and we believe he was on the 101st floor.
And which tower was he in? The first one hit or the second one?
The first one hit.
No, I believe it was the second building hit, the second plane that crashed.
So he was actually above the point.
Right, that is correct.
So are you at all hopeful? We have pictures of your brother and your brother-in-law right now. And people from all over the city are missing family members, are taking these pictures down to the armory in hopes that someone can make some sort of connection for them. Do you have any hope at all that your brother is alive?
Yes, I still believe he's alive, and I'm hoping that through these pictures, someone somewhere out there has seen him and can help us find him.
When is the last time you spoke with him?
I spoke with him Monday night.
Did anybody talk with him on Tuesday?
Yes, his best friend, Harry, spoke to him Tuesday morning at 8:30. He was already having coffee at his desk.
So no contact was made after the initial blast?
No, none.
Because you hear these heartrending conversations about people making cell phone calls to family members as they were being evacuated from the building.
Well,
so you don't even know if he ever attempted to be evacuated from the building?
No.
He worked for the Cantor Fitzgerald firm.
Yes.
And from what we understand, at least 1,000 of the some 2,700 folks, and these are some of the offices we're looking at, were housed in this tower. The head of the firm actually arrived late for work that day because he wanted to take his son to nursery school. He is missing a brother as well. But it would appear at this moment that this firm will suffer a huge toll. Have you been in touch with anybody from the firm? Because that is in fact the firm your brother also worked for.
I've tried calling several numbers and I can't reach anybody. Most of the time the numbers are busy, and when I do get through, they have no information for us.
See, my wife spent most of the time at home making a lot of phone calls, while me and his closest friends, closest relatives, went up and down of Manhattan to every hospital. We did come across a few families from Cantor Fitzgerald who also knew nothing. Actually, from most of the people that are missing are Cantor Fitzgerald people that just haven't heard any type, no names on lists, on hospitals, none missing or okay. It's like nothing at all. They can't get a single word of, you know, not even bodies, looking for bodies to match up, you know, to go with the bad, to balance out to see where exactly we stand. Nothing at all. So we just keep hoping that anything would just come up.
They keep taking our name and number and saying they would get back to us, but no one has
sending
called us
us
back.
all over, hospital to hospital, place to place. Even now in Jersey, we have close friends out there helping us, trying to get any kind of word, either or, one way or another. We want some type of answer.
Whether he's dead or alive, we just want to find his body.
And until then, we're just going to keep on.
I know this is so difficult for you to do, but so many other families have found themselves in the same position of running aimlessly from one hospital to the other hospital, trying to just get a little nugget of information. Describe to us what it's like to walk into an emergency room and try to find out about a lost family member.
First of all, they try not to let anyone in the hospitals, and they pretty much cut them off in front of the hospitals, emergencies and places like that. And
not out of unkindness, but simply out of the sheer number of people that have shown up.
To control everything, which is understandable. But again, what basically they're doing is giving more runarounds and showing us lists after lists, same list. Some aren't even updated well. A lot of the information, rumors are all almost completely wrong. Websites, wrong.
And some of those, I'm told, not intentionally wrong. People really want to help, but they're putting bad information out there.
For me, going to these places, and even though I'm not getting any answers, gives me some kind of comfort, because I know so many other people out there are going through what we are, and it's sort of comforting for me. So even though I know there's not much I can do, and they're not going to give me much information, I feel comfort.
Although you're finding comfort, Hillary Lane, one of our correspondents, was reporting down at the Armory, where a lot of family members are going with pictures of their loved ones, that the mood has changed dramatically from yesterday to today. That today you have investigators on the scene asking for dental records, asking for identifications of family members. You do understand why some people are incredibly angry this morning.
Yes.
I'm angry as well.
Just the waiting is taking a toll on everyone now. Not getting any answers and just waiting, it's the hardest thing.
And I know it's not your intention to criticize the efforts underway because you understand the magnitude of what's going on, but you certainly are caught in the middle of it.
We are so happy with New Yorkers and how they're handling it. Everyone has been great that we've walked to, although we haven't got any answers. Everyone was kind and walked up to us at all times, asking if we needed help, food, water, everything, clothing, and everything they wanted us to do, we did, as far as filling out the missing reports and all. And it's hard to be selfish, and we are sad for everyone that is involved, but we just know personally of him, and that's what we're trying to get the answer to. Now everyone's going through what we're going through, we know that, and it's, like I said, it's hard to be selfish, and we're trying to bear with it all right now.
What kind of a man was your brother, or is your brother? I know you still hold hope, even though he was above the area that got hit in that trade center. You're still not giving up.
No, he's wonderful. He's full of life. Everyone that knows him feels the same way. He's very caring, very loving. He's very funny. He can make anybody in any room laugh. He has that laugh that's so contagious. You hear him and you just laugh with him. He's wonderful. He loves my daughter, his niece. He loves his mother very much. She was the woman in his life. And he's just wonderful.
Any final thought, Richard?
Just the same, like everyone else, if they hear anything, to please call. We left 2 numbers, and wishing everyone else as much luck as we're trying to get.
If you two would stand by, we're awaiting a news conference with the mayor of New York City, and in the process of waiting for the news conference, I wanted to share something with you that I read in the Daily News, which is a local New York newspaper, and it basically reinforces what you said about the spirit of New Yorkers. We have a shot of the hundreds of volunteers who have streamed to this city, where we may also have a shot of the vigils that have been held basically for the last 3 days straight. And I'd like to read this to you if we can show some pictures of those folks that have come out to volunteer. But here's what the editorial said, talking about the president's upcoming visit to New York. Welcome to New York, Mr. President. Welcome to the world's greatest city. Welcome to a city filled with people who, despite their reputation for arrogance and for attitude, are at heart the kindest, warmest, most caring folks you'd ever want to meet. Some things will never change. Some things already have. The terrorist who struck at our heart murdered thousands, but they could not murder the American spirit. Even if they had destroyed the Statue of Liberty or the U.S. Capitol building or the White House, our strength would remain. America is not a building, not a statue. It is people. It is 8 million New Yorkers along with 272 million other Americans. And here's the mayor now of New York City to start his news conference.
That was why I stood funny yesterday. That'll go best.
Good morning. Obviously, everyone is concerned about the impact of the weather on the relief and recovery efforts, and there's no question that they're hampered by it. Things have to proceed more carefully, more cautiously. At the same time, they're going on because there is still a strong hope that we'll be able to recover people and find people and save them. So we will try very hard to conduct the operations today. Obviously, considering the fact that it's dangerous, or more dangerous than it otherwise would be, but they will go on, and hopefully we'll be able to find and save some people today. The misinformation yesterday was a cause of real concern, and I'd like to explain at least a little bit about it and ask you if you could consider in reporting this information to be more patient than to just run with information before it's been verified. Some of it is meaningless ultimately because it gets corrected, but some of it could be very, very dangerous and very emotionally damaging. Reports, for example, that there are people that we've discovered and been in contact with that aren't verified aren't true. And there was a report like that yesterday evening that a woman was in communication with people and there were 10 or 15 people in a store and underneath, and it was reported rather widely, and it leads to lots of families becoming very, very hopeful and then finding out that it's just not plain true at all.